A lot can change in a decade, and if you played 2011's Warhammer 40,000 Space Marine at launch, it has been over a decade since you first experienced the game's narrative. That is unless you've replayed it recently, of course. However, if you clicked on this video, that's probably not you. So whether you've forgotten or never played it at all, you're in the right place. We're going over all the major events of the original game just in time for the much anticipated sequel. Alert! Forge World Grya is under attack by an orc. Wah! Sorry, let me break that down. Forge Worlds are factory planets that the Imperium use to mass produce their tools of war. Grya is one such planet, and it specialises in the production of weapons for the Imperial armies. Aside from the loads of guns, there is also the Titan Invictus, a large mech that holds the title for most powerful weapon on the planet. These battle titans are of extreme importance, and the Imperium would hate to see them falling into the wrong hands. As it turns out, those hands are green. A Waaagh is simply the fancy name for a massive group of orcs. In the case of this invasion, thousands of orcs led by the war boss Grimskull. Grimskull really wants those weapons, and definitely wants the Invictus. So he and his green friends are pulling out all the stops in order to get them. On the verge of being overrun, Grya called out for help, and thankfully because of the planet's importance, the Imperial forces answered. The first of the bunch to swoop in are the 203rd Company of Cadians. Unfortunately for them, they were also the first to learn that instead of destroying Grya's orbital defense guns, the orcs instead took control of them and were able to shoot Imperial forces out of the sky. The guards that did make it to the surface were left to fight with no reinforcements unless they could stop those guns. But the fact was, they were outnumbered and thinning fast. Chances of opening a path for reinforcements were unfortunately slim. This seemed like the right time to call in the big guns, the genetically modified superhuman soldiers known as the Space Marines. Better yet, it was time to call in the Warhammer 40,000 poster boys, the Ultramarines. 2011 Space Marine begins with Captain Demetrian Titus, veteran Sergeant Sidonus, and newbie Leandros making their way planetside in a strike cruiser. After the ship takes damage from the Orc-controlled defences, Titus suggests taking a different route to the surface, base jumping out the back of their ship and using their jump packs to aid in their descent. Leandros isn't thrilled and quietly protests, as this course of action goes against the Marine Code of Conduct, the Codex Astartes.
The Codex Astartes does not support this action.
However, he is far from in charge and the plan goes forth anyway. On the way down, the three Marines are separated as Sidonus and Leandros fall to Grya's surface, and Titus lands onto an orc ship instead. There, Titus begins slaughtering the orcs aboard before getting his first meet and greet with Grimskull himself. Instead of taking the war boss out with his bare hands right there and then, Titus turns the ship's guns onto itself, causing it to fall from the sky into Grya's surface. A bit of a risky move, but Titus survives the crash and successfully reunites with a very cranky Leandros.
Are you wounded?
The Codex Astartes warns against using jump packs to leap blindly into enemy fire, and for good reason.
After wiping his tears, Leandros accompanies Titus in reuniting with Sidonus, and together the three Marines fight their way through hordes of orcs in an effort to save the Imperial Guard, aka the Astra Militarum, aka the normal human soldiers. It wouldn't be long before Titus and crew shift the tides and secure the battlefield. With the situation briefly in favour of the Imperium, the Marines meet with 2nd Lieutenant Mira of the 203rd Cadian Regiment, the only surviving Imperial Guard officer left on the planet. Titus thanks Mira for her service and compliments her leadership, especially under the circumstances. But their meeting doesn't last long as the goal is clear: take back the orbital defense guns from the Greenskins. And by take back, I mean blow those frackers up. With that objective complete, the Imperial Guard are saved and can once more replenish their numbers. From here, Titus and crew set their sights on the Manufactorum in order to secure the planet's battle titans. When they arrive, the Marines encounter a distress signal from an Inquisitor named Drogon. The message describes a device he is developing that is at risk of falling into green hands if he doesn't receive help. Thus, the Marines gained a new goal: find the Inquisitor before the orcs do. Horde after horde, Titus fights his way through the Manufactorum until he finally reaches the Titan Invictus and Drogon soon thereafter. It turns out that the device is a power source of Inquisitor Drogon's own creation, and an object that, if it falls into the wrong hands, could easily destroy the planet. With the possibility of Grya's demise looming over their heads, the Marines follow Drogon's advice of recovering the power source. Unfortunately, Grimskull wasn't far behind and put a damper on that plan. That delay doesn't last too long though, as the war boss's goons weren't a match for the strength of Titus. After the Orc and Marine scuffle, Titus retrieves Drogon's device from the generator room of the Manufactorum, causing a massive explosion. But similar to the start of the story, Titus survives, rising from the rubble and securing the device in its case. Once again, Titus battles his way through Xenos and reunites with his fellow Marines just in time to see Orc reinforcements arriving planetside. Time to grab Drogon and get the hell out of here with the device. All of this sounds like a pretty good plan, but Drogon is much more concerned with how Titus was able to handle the device without its shield and live to tell the tale. This is because, to the shock of the Space Marines, it conducts raw energy from the warp.
How are you still alive?
What the heck is the warp? Well, it's basically hell. It's an alternative dimension of purely psychic energy that is home to the Chaos Gods and their unending legions of demons. However, travelling through the warp is how most races in Warhammer 40,000 travel huge distances, although it isn't necessarily something you want to be associated with if you want the Inquisition to leave you well alone. After Leandros slings some accusations of heresy towards Titus, Drogon explains the device powers a weapon that the Imperium hopes to use against the Orcs, the Psychic Scourge. This untested weapon could either take out all the Orcs on Grya or split the planet in two. Out of options, Titus suggests taking the chance. A risky play, but the Emperor protects. So, with the help of Lieutenant Mirror, the Ultramarines get a ride to Drogon's research facility. A bumpy ride as they are attacked by airborne Orc Stormboys. Inside the lab, Titus inserts the power source into the weapon and, despite another interruption from Grimskull, manages to fire the Psychic Scourge.
Space Marine! Was that supposed to hurt?
However, instead of killing the Orcs or splitting the planet in two, the Scourge opened up a Chaos portal that spits out demons as well as their leader, Lord Nemeroth. It turns out that Drogon died a long time ago, and Nemeroth was using his corpse as a puppet to trick the Ultramarines into opening the portal. During the commotion, Grimskull is knocked over the edge of the spire when the demons emerge. This doesn't kill him though, as he climbs back up and picks a fight with Nemeroth, sending them both over the edge. Maybe Grimskull isn't such a bad guy after all.
I ain't so easy to kill.
Now, alongside the large number of Orcs, Grya is now being flooded by a growing number of Chaos Space Marines and demons from the orbital spire. The only way to end this mess of a battlefield was to use the Titan Invictus to destroy that spire. The new goal was clear, but Leandros still had some things he needed to get off his chest.
The Codex Astartes warns that those in league with Chaos can withstand the warp's touch.
This guy checks the Codex every time he needs to blink or breathe. To those who never played the original game, no one likes Leandros. Anyway, after dismissing Leandros' concerns, Titus makes his way to the Titan Manufactorum where he bumps into Grimskull. As in a showcase of Orc resilience, that second fall didn't kill him either. After Titus and Grimskull battle one last time, Grimskull's death finally leads to the end of the Orc War. With another victory on his resume, Titus reaches Invictus, overpowers its weapons using Drogon's device, and sends a huge blast at the orbital spire. The Chaos fleets had no way to enter anymore, but the Ultramarines still had to deal with the demons and Chaos forces that had already gotten through, including Nemeroth. After being entrusted with Drogon's device, Sidonus unfortunately falls to the greedy hands of Nemeroth. Standing over his lifeless body, the Chaos Lord explains his plan to use the device to ascend into a truly immortal Greater Demon, and hints that Titus's resistance could make him an agent of Chaos very soon. Filled with righteous fury after witnessing the death of his brother-in-arms, Titus sets out to exact revenge on Nemeroth. Once again, Leandros wasn't happy about this plan. Titus fights his way to Nemeroth, joined by the Ultramarine 2nd Company as well as reinforcements from the Blood Ravens chapter. These being the stars of Relic's Dawn of War titles, until finally reaching the Spire and ascending with the use of a jump pack. Before the final confrontation, Nemeroth insists that Titus's connection to the warp means he is destined to fall to chaos, and lead his own band of traitor Space Marines, with Titus proclaiming his only destiny is to destroy the Emperor's enemies. A battle ensues and Nemeroth's ascension to demonhood is cut short before it completes. Titus uses his warp resistance to tackle Nemeroth from the Spire and spends the time it takes for these two foes to fall to Earth, giving Nemeroth a well-deserved kicking. The Chaos Champion is destroyed and Titus shatters the warp-infused power source. A wounded but victorious Titus takes in the view of Graia, a world he has saved. But this moment of calm is interrupted by the arrival of Inquisitor Thrax and his escort of Black Templars. It turns out Leandros snitched all the way up to the Inquisition, and thus Titus is given an ultimatum. Surrender to the authority of the Inquisition, or doom his fellow Ultramarines and Astra Militarum allies to be found guilty by association. Titus leaves Graia in the custody of Thrax, but not before delivering Leandros one final savage emotional blow.
And you have failed.
As the ramp of the Inquisitorial craft comes to a close, so does the story of 2011's Space Marine. But there is actually a lot more lore between the events of the original Space Marine and 2024's Space Marine 2, as the sequel takes place approximately 200 years after the events of the first game. What did Thrax do with Titus? Where has everyone's favourite Ultramarine been all this time? Why has he got a fresh new suit of armour? And what the hell is a Tyranid? Well, we're going to answer all of those questions in a follow-up video coming very soon, so be sure to subscribe for that, as well as lots more Space Marine 2 content. Until then, thanks for watching, and we will see you next time.